So what now I'd like to do is turn it over to Curt Hayes and his son Jeffrey, who are going to show you a little bit about what we call car talk. So Curt and Jeffrey, you are on.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Yes, hi everyone. Good afternoon. This is our session of car talk, the ins and outs of car maintenance and ownership, everything you can learn in a half an hour about a car. My name is Curt Hayes. I've been driving for 36 years. I did that math last night. I've been working on cars for about 40 years. Well, I kind of started driving when I was 4.5, and I took your parents' car around the block, but we don't count that. But been a lifelong home mechanic. I've never done it professionally, but I've worked on a lot of cars.
I'm Jeffrey Hayes. I have not worked on cars professionally, but I have worked on them a fair amount. Worked on them off and on for about the last 5 years, but more intensely for about the last year and a half. Yeah. I've been driving the last couple. Most of my car work has been on this car, which I crashed and totaled twice and repaired both times.
And I'm Matthew. I'm the camera person, and I'm a history major, so I'm just along for the ride.
You'll be learning as much as the students are.
Yeah, this is good for everybody.
Yeah.
So let's get started. So first thing I want to talk about is when you're driving someplace, what things you should have with you. And we all know they covered this in driver's ed, or it was probably one of those classes we all slept through. So you hit it there, Jeffrey.
All right, so I mean, obviously you need your license and your registration, because you need those to legally drive. Proof of insurance, also required to legally drive, and very handy if, for instance, you get in an accident.
Registration looks just like this. We don't want to super close up because
never mind.
Most of which I covered. And then you need proof of insurance too. By law, you have to carry that. By law in this state, at least.
You definitely need a key, because without that, you'd either be really good at messing with cars or you're not going anywhere. First aid kit, very good to have. Not strictly required, but I'd call it required. I mean, it doesn't hurt, and it will definitely come in handy. Owner's manual, if your car came with one, you're going to want to keep it in the glove box or something. Comes in handy. Pair of gloves, in case stuff gets messy.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah, stuff for changing the tire, which includes the gloves. We'll get into that later.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about, obviously what you need to carry with you, what you want to do in case you get in an accident, when you need to pull over to the side of the road, and then we're going to change the tire together, and then if we have time, we'll do some more stuff after that. So, Jeffrey, you want to talk about, you have the most experience, what to do in case you get in an accident?
Well, first thing to do when you get in an accident is make sure nobody's in any immediate danger. After that, make sure that the car's out of the road. If it's still driving, then you can just pull over.
Safely pull off the road and get out of traffic.
Yeah. If not, then you might have to push it. I did that once. But
I didn't know that.
Do it all safely, obviously.
Yeah.
If your car's not drivable, that's definitely an indication you're going to have to call 911. By state law, if the accident has a damage value of more than $500, you have to call police. Or if anybody's hurt, either way, it's going to be more than $500. It's unlikely that you can do more than just a simple fender or a bumper bender for less than $500. So almost certainly you'll be calling 911. However, if it's something really simple, you don't have to get them involved. But once you get off to the side of the road or get in a safe position, then you want to share information with the other driver. Everybody's got phones, so just take a picture of their insurance card. They'll take a picture of yours and then get their phone number. And that's really all you need. Anything else on that?
No, except that once you've done all of that, and if the police did show up, then once they've done everything they need to do and they've gone, then you have to figure out how to get the car home. If it's drivable, then great, just drive it home and hope it doesn't fall to pieces. If not, then you call a tow truck, or if you have it, AAA.
Yeah. And certainly a good indication that you cannot drive your car is if you see fluids leaking out of the bottom. So if you look under the front bumper and there's a puddle of anything, most likely it's either coolant for the engine or oil. And either one of those are really bad, and you can't drive your car without. If you're lucky, it's just washer fluid, and then you're okay. But it's kind of hard to tell. So be on the safe side. If you see something leaking out of the bottom of your car, it's not really drivable.
I think that covers it.
Yeah. So now we want to talk about what you do.
When to pull over.
When to pull over. You're driving down the road and something happens. How do you know that you need to pull over? Well, if you got a vibration that you don't recognize, like your wheel starts vibrating heavily or the car starts shaking, that's a good sign you might need to pull over. If you've got noises that you haven't heard before, rattles or booms or pops, all bad things when you're driving cars.
If you smell anything weird, like if you smell steam or smoke that shouldn't be there, although in a car most steam or smoke shouldn't be there, then that's really bad, because that's probably something burning.
Definitely if your car is producing smoke like from underneath the hood, that's bad. Your car could be on fire. Cars, as it turns out, burn really well.
Probably something to do with all that gas and oil.
It's all the gas and oil and the plastic. But anyhow, in that case, you want to get over to the side of the road as safely, in a safe place, and do it as safely as possible. So definitely, don't just jam the steering wheel over and run other people off the road in your attempt to get to the shoulder as fast as you can. But do it safely. Pull to the side of the road, get as far off to the side of the shoulder as you can, away from traffic, and then stop. And then if you've got AAA or something, call somebody, talk to them, figure out what to do.
Lights on the dashboard.
Yeah, there's a couple of lights on the dashboard that are important. One is called the check engine light, and that will often look like a little engine symbol, as we used to know them with a little fan on the front. We don't have anymore, but sometimes it'll, might be a little triangle with an exclamation point in it.
Or it might be just
actually
the word check.
Could say check. And what that means is that the computer that's running your car, that's running the engine, has discovered that something is wrong. And it could be as minor as you didn't tighten up your gas cap tight enough and the tank is leaking air into it, which it does detect. And that's an emissions problem. To you have a hole in one of the pistons in your engine, and it's detected that piston isn't working anymore, which is pretty severe. Yeah. So unfortunately, it's all one light for everything. Now, if that light comes on and your car seems to be running okay, then it's probably okay to just go in and have it checked. And depending on what you're comfortable with, you can take it to a dealer, you can take it to a mechanic, and they'll charge about $100 to diagnose a check engine light. If you take it to an auto parts store like O'Reilly's or AutoZone, they'll actually do it for free. They have the readers that plug into your car, and they'll read the codes, they'll tell you what the problem is, and they'll even offer to sell you the parts to fix it. And often that's a really good way to go, because it is often something just like a gas cap that wasn't tightened up tight enough. If you didn't go click, 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 or whatever it is it says to do it on, and it's leaking, then you get a check engine light. So the other one that's super important is if the oil pressure light goes on your dash. It usually looks like maybe a little can of oil, might be a little pressure symbol. Every car is kind of different. What that means is your engine oil has run out, and the oil is absolutely fundamentally necessary to your engine's operation. You can run out of gas and your engine stops, and you go and you pour gas in it and fires up. off you go. If you run out of oil and the engine stops, you need a new engine. So that can be multiple thousands of dollars to get fixed. It is not something to be ignored. So if you see a little oil light go on your dash, get over to the side of the road as fast as you safely can and shut the engine off. You absolutely need to do that, or you're going to be thinking about it again.
Tire pressure light?
Not really. Not really, I suppose. Okay, so one of the reasons you might stop is you might have a vibration in your car, and that vibration could be caused from a flat tire. So if your wheel starts shaking, that's often a sign of a flat tire in the front. You have to be careful driving. We don't actually have a flat tire to demonstrate. We'll just pretend that one was flat. Cars get really strange to drive when they have flat tires, kind of squishy. So you want to brake slowly, move over safely, get off to the side of the road. If you can tell which side it's on, you can leave yourself a little more room on that side of the car to change the tire, which is what we're going to do now. So if you get a flat tire and your car has a spare, which most likely it does.
Now, where would that spare be located?
There you go.
Well, there's a few different ways you can figure that out. First off, and probably about the most guaranteed, is you can check out the owner's manual. And we have a page marked, and it'll just show you where the spare is. Secondly, you can look it up. You know, somebody's got it online somewhere. That might not always work, you know, if you're at a reception or whatever. So keep the owner's manual just in case. And third, in a lot of sedans and coupes and stuff like that, most cars that carry a spare, it'll just be in the trunk. And then you pull up this.
False bottom.
Yeah,
That's where we hide things, like spare tires.
And then there you go, spare tire. And then also in here, you have a couple of tools necessary for changing
So
it.
you can see the tools.
You have your tire iron, your handle up here. Is that just?
Yep, the jack handle.
And then in there, deeply in there,
Right down there.
that thing.
It's the jack.
Yeah. Which is a bit of a pain to get out and put back in. But
So you start by taking everything out.
which is a bit of a pain because none of this goes in a reasonable manner. In this car, the jack is actually tightened into place.
And they usually sneak these things in so they just barely fit, so getting them out can be a pain too. This is a pretty common arrangement for holding the tire in. Get over here so you can see.
It's going to be a few seconds. This thing has a long screw. And voila, spare tire.
You get your spare tire out. And then we're going to pretend that this tire is flat. See,
no need to pretend. Just grab a knife.
Yeah, but tires are expensive.
Okay, so 3 things we need to do. Jack up the car. Take the old tire off. Put the new tire on. 4 things. And put the car back down again. Okay. But before we can jack the car up, we want to make sure it's secure. Because what we don't want to have happen is we get the car up in the air, or we get the tire up in the air, and then it rolls off the jack. That can be really dangerous, can kill you. You know, if you happen to be underneath the car, which you never, ever, ever do, you never get under a car when it's just on a jack. But if you were, that can be really bad. Even if nobody got hurt, now your car is laying on the ground, it's got no wheel on, and the jack is squished underneath it, you're kind of stuck. So what you need to do, you have to make sure your car is in park, and then you have to make sure the parking brake is set. both things have to happen. If you have a manual shift car, which there aren't very many of these days, make sure it's in gear. First gear is the best idea because it's the lowest, and that's the hardest to push. But always set the parking brake. You cannot just rely on it being in park. If your car's on a slope and it's in park only, and you lift up one of the front wheels, it can actually still roll away because it does not lock the two wheels, it just locks the center. And there's no time to get into that now, but it can be bad. So yeah, so once you do that, you're looking at this, you're like, well, what do I do now? So Jeffrey, how do you know where the jack goes?
Well, again, there's a few different ways. You can look in the owner's manual. We don't have the page mark, but it's in there somewhere. You can look it up. It's online. It's always online. Or in this case, you can just look on the jack.
You see, it's got the little arrows point to the two spots on the car, more or less, where it is. And also, the second picture shows that there's a couple of different little notches placed around where you want to put the jack. And then you bring the camera down here.
Yeah, you're going to want to look underneath the edge of the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can see
If you see, there's a little couple of notches where you can put the jack.
Right here, those two notches. Okay. And we will turn the jack so it starts going up.
You want to make sure it's nice and set before you really start going at it.
Yeah. So just like that. So that's in the right spot. It's right in between those two. But before we jack it up all the way, first thing we need to do is loosen up the lug nuts because they're almost certainly very tight.
And I'm not going to be able to turn these by hand. So
these handles are always too short.
always.
So the easiest way to do it is just put it on and step on it. Because almost all of us weigh enough to get it off there. Really, if you weigh over 80 pounds and you step on the end of that foot-long bar, you will be just fine. Okay, so once, and you don't want to take them off, because if you take them off, the wheel might fall off while it's still holding up the car. That wouldn't be good. So at this point,
you get your
raise the
handle
car,
and it's got a little loop on the end that just hooks right through there. And you can start turning. And I'm sure my dad can find something to talk about while I'm jacking up the car.
we'll just watch. So don't be surprised if, say, you're jacking up the front wheel on a car and both wheels on the same side of the car come off the ground. That's actually pretty common in a front-wheel drive car. It's because all the weight, not all the weight, but a lot of the weight on the car is in the front. And so you might actually see both the front and the rear come off the ground. It's a little disconcerting, but again, as long as you have the brakes set and in park, you're good. Okay, looks like we're up.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, now that it's up in the air, you can take off the lug nuts the rest of the way.
And generally, once you've gotten them loose,
together so we get them off.
yeah, once you get them at least started, then you can just take them off by hand. That was good. And you're going to want to make sure that wherever you put the lug nuts, they don't roll away, because you need them for the spare.
You want them all,
yeah,
not just some portion. You notice Jeffrey's holding the tire with his toe there. That's to keep it from starting to fall off, because it just makes the whole thing harder. Go ahead. Okay, so there we go.
And while I'm sure we could have so many fascinating discussions about what we can see now that the tire is
That's
gone,
right.
we don't really have the time.
This is called the hub. These are the studs. That's the brake drum. This car is old and has drum brakes on the back. So when you take your spare tire, you put it on, what you want to do once you nail down there a bit so you can see. Get one of the studs located first and then push on the rest. Just easier that way. And then again, it's kind of a hassle. It just doesn't want to stay on very well. You kind of need 3 hands when doing these. And get the first one on and snug it up kind of tight, and then the rest of them go on pretty quickly.
And you don't want to get them like really tight just yet.
Yep.
Just like when you're taking it off, you want to wait until it's back on the ground to get them.
Now, why is that?
Well, it's going to be hard to tighten while it's on the jack. And it can also, again, if it's a front wheel drive car and you're working in the front and it's on the jack, when you're torquing those, it can actually be trying to drive the car off of the jack.
Oh.
Which you don't want to do.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Okay, that's good. Let's see. So we go through a little checklist in our head. And we say, okay, did we get all 4 lug nuts on there? Yep, we did. Give it a little shake. Everything seems pretty stable. So now we can take it down off the jack. Okay. Now you need to tighten these up the rest of the way.
And you do that the same way that you did the other ones. Put it on, and you step on it.
And you just want to step until it gets hard to turn.
It's a little weirdly defined, but it's the best you got.
Yeah. What you really should be using is something called a torque wrench to set them to the right tightness, but you're not going to have that out on the road. So you want to make them tight enough so they don't fall off, but not so tight that you might be breaking something.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jeffrey.
Once you've done one of them, then you want to do the one directly across from it. It keeps the stress from being too centralized on one part. It just spreads things out.
Did you know that?
Involved.
Okay. So we got the spare on there. Take all your stuff. Your tools and your flat tire.
Flat tire would be lighter.
Back in the trunk. All that air.
Air has weight.
Put it back in the trunk, and then with this kind of spare, which we call a compact spare, it's not meant to be on the car for very long, nor it shouldn't go at full highway speeds either. So what you want to do is you want to get to someplace where you can get the tire changed, get the flat tire that you had fixed as soon as possible without driving a whole long distance. So, Les Schwab or Discount Tire, Big 5 tires, they're all good for stuff like that. They go. And a lot of times they'll actually fix flats for free, which is convenient. And then they'll put everything back in for you and get the spare tire back in and all that. Yeah, so that's changing the tire. How do you do on time? Oh, okay.
You want to talk about the sort of spare that your car has?
So there are some cars, a lot of BMWs, Mercedes, things like that, that you might find yourself driving, that have what's called a run flat tire on them. So they don't actually have a spare tire. They've taken them out. It saves weight, get better fuel economy. And so they have tires that can run actually with no air in them. Some people are actually unaware that they have a flat tire when that happens. They're not meant to be driven at full speed on a highway, and they're not meant to be driven more than 30 or 40 miles, I believe. And they still have to be fixed just like any other tire. But it's good to be aware of what kind of tires you have on your car. And then one thing I missed earlier when talking about when to pull over is if you think you might have a flat tire, it's good to pull off and check, because a tire, along with installation, all that, can cost up to $150. And so you can, if you drive on a flat tire for too long and it's a standard kind of tire, then you've just torn up $150 and thrown it away, because what it does is it damages the tire beyond repair. And there's a lot of cars I see on the side of the road that have a flat, and you can see there where the whole side of the tire has been cut through because it's had no pressure in it. The wheel just runs on the sidewall, the side of the tire, and it just ruins it. And they can't be repaired. And so it's ka-ching, $150. And the problem is it could actually be, instead of one new tire, it could be 4 new tires. If your tires are getting kind of old, then you don't want to replace just one of them and have it brand new and the other one's all worn. You want to do them all 4. So that can be $600 or $700. So you really got to pay attention to this stuff. It's always a good idea before you get in a car every once in a while to just have a little walk around and just look at the tires and just see what they look like. And if they look low, go get them checked. If you don't feel comfortable checking the air pressure in your tires, there are a variety of places. Again, Les Schwab, Big O Tires, Discount Tires, they'll all do it for free. You just pull up and say, hey, can you check my air? And they'll do it, and they'll fill it up to what it should be, and off you go. And they're in it to, hopefully if they're nice to you, you'll come back and buy a set of tires. But it's a good thing. So it also saves you money and fuel economy.
Although if you do feel comfortable checking them, then you can just do it with the bike pump.
Yeah. And the way that you know what air pressure to put in your tire, every car sold since I don't know when has a sticker right here. Or does it say pressure on there?
It does have tires.
I don't know. It does on the tires. I can't believe this car didn't. Okay. Every other car I've ever seen.
The car made sense apparently 2001.
We're at the ad lib part. Every car that I've ever seen, every other car, tells you what tire pressure you should have in the tires. It's a sticker on the door jamb right there. And that's what you know. That's how you know what tire pressure to put in your tires. So if you have a bike pump, you can do it with that. Gas stations, they have the little pay kiosks. That's good too. Or if you got a few extra minutes, go to Les Schwab or something like that, and they'll do it for you.
And if you're checking it on your own, then while you're checking them, you also want to check the spare, because if it happens that your spare is low on there, then that's
yes. If you have a flat tire and a flat spare, you just got 2 flat tires.
And I love
so. And we actually, last night when we were running through this, discovered that this spare, which is supposed to have 60 pounds of pressure in it, only had 20. So I'm actually very happy that we did this so we could catch that. Okay. Thoughts about 12:30. Barry, do we want to?
We do have a couple of questions. So let me ask those. It was interesting. You just talked about the flat. That happened to me 2 years ago. And I pulled over, put the spare on, and it was completely flat.
Oh no!
So I had to at that point call AAA. So, anyways, the first question we have is: I heard if you buy one new tire, you should replace all of them for balancing purposes. Is that correct?
For balancing purposes,
I think it's more in relationship to front wheel drive.
What's that?
It might be more in relationship to the front wheel drive cars that
it really
trying to sell you.
Sure. If the other 3 tires are not very worn, if they're fairly new, then I don't see why you couldn't replace just one. But yeah, if you have 3 worn tires, maybe they're at half life or lower, and you replace a brand new one and it goes on the front, that could be a little weird, could make it drive a little strange. Could make it behave differently in the rain, which is okay because we don't get any of that around here. And especially stopping when it's wet could be a problem. So yeah, I could see that. That'd be a recommendation.
I think your luxury or low profile cars the salespeople will tend to have you want to change those out more frequently.
Well, yes, and they'll a lot of money for those too. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's a money thing. Okay, so next question. How long on average can I run my radio with the engine off before it will run down the battery?
Oh, wow. It can be anywhere from 5 or 6 hours to 30 minutes or less. It really just depends on the age of the battery in your car. Batteries only have a finite life to them. And as they get older and older, their capacity, how much energy they have inside, gets lower and lower. And then it also just depends on your stereo. If you've got a big boomer and you got it cranked up, really thumping,
that's going to drain energy faster.
Going to drain the battery a lot faster. So there's no stock answer to that. Sorry.
Okay. You mentioned this. You mentioned the spare tire and drive time. A little bit more explanation on that. I mean, would you suggest like 10 miles, or would it be okay to go from, central Washington back home to Western Washington? Is that?
Oh, wow. Yeah, certainly. I mean, certainly if you're stuck, you can use these compact spares. So I'm assuming we're talking about that one.
That guy. Yeah,
I mean, basically all they say is don't drive on it any more than necessary, which doesn't tell us a whole lot. But yeah, you have to get where you have to get to go. Whatever I meant. So if you're in the middle of Eastern Washington and you get a flat and you change it and there's not another town for 80 miles, then so be it. That's just how far you have to go. I wouldn't do 80. I wouldn't even do 70. I'd probably do 60. The owner's manual will tell you for the compact spare what their maximum recommended speed is. And the thing is, that speed, just so you know, is based on a fully loaded car in the middle of a hot summer on super black asphalt. So those are the absolute worst conditions for a tire. So that's, if they say the max speed is 55 and you've got your car loaded and it's 110 and Washington, you should probably go 55, if not slower. If you don't have it loaded and it's not 110, you're probably safe going faster. But the absolute safest way is just follow the directions in the owner's manual.
Okay. Personal one for me, regarding antifreeze. And if you're low on antifreeze and you get a hot temperature gauge light on, just explain that from a safety precaution area as far as those caps and like that. Yeah.
So if you get an overheated engine because you're low on antifreeze, one, you probably have a leak, so that should be rectified at some point. Also, what you never, ever, 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 ever do is open the radiator while the engine is hot. The radiator cap is meant to hold back pressure, which means that when the engine is hot, it will be pressurized underneath. I've watched people take off radiator caps, and the problem is when the system is all pressurized, it can be above the boiling point of water and not boil because it's under a high pressure. As soon as you take that cap off, it's no longer under pressure, and so the whole thing boils instantaneously. And I've seen a column of water coming out of the top of the radiator and hitting the underside of the hood, and it's 215 degrees or 230 degrees Fahrenheit, and it is if your hand's in the way, you'll lose the skin on your arm, if not worse.
Imagine if somebody took like a can of Coke or whatever, heated it up to a couple hundred degrees, shook it up, and then set it in front of you. You don't want to open it until it's cooled down.
Don't take the lid off. So yeah, if you get in that situation, then the only thing you can do is pull over, turn it off, let it cool off, or you get yourself to a place where you can do that, and then add water if you have to. But pre-mixed antifreeze is the best, and they sell that at a lot of places now. And just fill it back up to where it needs to be. And really, back up where it needs to be is the radiator full. Cars always have an overflow container for the radiator. We'll look at that in this truck.
Our radiator has been replaced like 3 times so far.
We're on our 3rd radiator. So you'll see a line coming from the top of the radiator. So here's the cap I'm talking about. So you never take off while it's hot. And there's the radiator fluid, or the coolant. And then here's the container for the coolant. And you might be able to see it's got a high and a low, or full and empty, whatever they call it in this car. So if you had an overheated engine and you needed to fill it back up again, you'd fill it in the radiator first, and then come over here and fill this up probably about halfway in between full and empty. And that way, the next time the car heats up, if some of the fluid needs to come out and go into the reservoir because you put too much in there, that's okay. It does so. And then when it cools off, if it needs to draw it back in, it will. So that's why this line actually has a tube on it that goes down into the fluid that's in there, into the coolant that's in there.
All right. And we got one final question, I think, and that one is, it says, jump starting a car, how do I know which cable to attach to which plug on the battery?
Oh, well, thankfully, the battery in this car is kind of hard to get to.
And kind of non-standard.
So the plugs on actually, hold that thought real quick.
Okay.
I have some jumper cables right here.
Yeah, the battery on this car, the one you can get to, it originally came off of a motorcycle.
So here's a standard set of jumper cables.
So I'm also worried about this because I've heard if you do it wrong, you can blow up your battery.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yes, you can.
100%.
Yep. So they are color-coded, and so are the terminals on your battery.
Okay.
So the battery will have a red terminal and a black terminal. Now, what you want to do is you want to put this on the red terminal. I can never remember which order to do this in.
Yeah, I think it's...
That's reassuring.
Usually, well, I know. Usually what I do is I do this on each end. Then you can connect the ground, black one. And this you don't want to connect to the battery itself. You'd like to connect it somewhere else. So the battery will have a black cable coming off of it, and it usually goes to the engine or maybe to what's called the firewall part of the car. And what you want to do is connect to that. So connect the black one to that on each end, and then go to the car with the dead battery, connect this one to the red one, on top. Usually they'll have some sort of plastic cover you have to pull off first. And then on the other end, connect this to the black one on the good car.
The black one on the good car?
Sorry, the red one. Oh my. Yes, connect this to the red
So
one.
black to black and red to red.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You match the colors.
Okay.
That's absolutely the most critical thing. You want to make sure that the car with the good battery is running, so that its alternator can charge in the battery at the same time. And as soon as you connect this, you'll probably get a little spark because your battery is dead and it's going to start charging. You want to wait a couple of minutes to get some juice into your dead battery, and then you should be able to start your car up. And as soon as it starts, go to the car that was running to begin with, disconnect the red one, flip it like that. Go to the other car, disconnect the red one over there, and then you can disconnect the two black ones in whatever order you want.
Okay.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, thank you very, very much. I don't believe there was any other questions in the chat room. Nope, that's it.
Okay.
So again, thank you so much. Learned a lot.